All right, Connie, I got two articles for us this week. First one comes out of CBC up in Canada. Workers want a flexible future at work. What do employers want? And it discusses several examples of companies now have about 35% of their employees back at the office. Microsoft Canada is one of the ones highlighted. And they talk about they're going to be launching listening sessions to dig deeper into the areas that the employees want addressed. So my question for you is these listening sessions, this sounds like what you preach. What are your thoughts around this development?
Well, I think it's so great that they're actually spending the time to do these listening sessions because that's where it starts. To get the perspective of your employee base is going to give you some great insights, but you need to be careful in the way you go about doing it and planful because depending on how you go about this approach, you may not really end up with the right kind of information that can be actionable, can help you move forward in the way that you want to do it. What you don't want is for this to be a gripe session. And inevitably, that can easily go that way. When you're opening up and wanting to get the feedback of people, the first thing that many want to do is just express their frustrations. Of course, naturally, they're going to want to just share everything and anything, but you will really need to create it such a way where you are focusing on the context of why they are feeling frustrated, what's really inhibiting their ability to contribute in the best way possible, such that you can then work together to develop solutions and actually extract from them their ideas on ways to operate differently. So how you go about doing this is going to be really important to establish the right outcomes that you want from these listening sessions.
That's a good point. I think that this listening sessions are the future of work, but getting that right seems like it's a bit of a tricky dance.
Right. It's not simple. But what's so important is to make sure that you go in with a very clear plan, as I said before, and make sure that you've identified what the objective is, what the right outcomes are. And really, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is build a relationship. Almost think about the fact that you're building a voice of the employee type of program versus it being just a one and done type of situation, but you're building a long-term relationship with your employees to get the pulse of what they're thinking, why they're thinking it, help work with them to build towards mutual solutions together so that over time you can create some maybe iterative approaches to building a better culture collectively.
Interesting. So, in a similar vein, the second article comes out of Fast Company this week, and this is entitled Consider This Before Sending Out Another Terrible Workplace Survey. And it discusses how surveying employees about their feelings is a good idea, but most data collection falls short. Specifically, it mentions SurveyMonkey and platforms like that have made this very easy to blast out surveys. But a lot of that data that you get back is garbage because there's poorly designed surveys. It talks about how poor design of the survey itself and the research leads to unreliable results, which executive leaders then use that to make their policy decisions. And then obviously that would result in the risk of a poor policy decision. So what are your thoughts around this? This sounds very similar.
Oh, it does. Well, it still gets back to that same premise I was talking about earlier, which is a lot of the work goes into developing and defining and being very clear on what you want to get out of the information that you're looking to collect. The survey is just a tool to pull those insights. And again, surveys are a way to try to get that quantitative measure to say, okay, this is definitively what's happening. But the reality is that that doesn't give you the full insight and context of why people have marked something on a survey the way that they did. So it requires more time upfront to structure, to map out what it is you really, really want to learn so that when you get the information back, you're then able to act on it versus just saying, oh, wait, I surveyed the employee base, I got some numbers, and now it shows that I can do something about it. It's not necessarily the case. It can be really hard. And so the other piece is that you just have to be mindful that in the end, your company is made up of employees. They're individuals. Everyone's different. So how you structure that is important. And it's not necessarily so simple as asking 10 questions. What do you think you need? And why, where else can we help you? And based on those percentages, that gives you a roadmap.
That's the standard HR blast out.
And the HR team obviously is trying to do the best that they can to get that information to help really define a different path to create the right culture. But there's so much more to it now, and we're in this new world where people are really thinking about what they personally need. They're not divorcing work and home life. So the way you go about asking these questions and understanding the context of their situation and how that really relates to the work that they do within your company is important to then identify those nuggets in which you can determine what are really new ways of working versus it just being, well, are you remote, part-time, and then come to the office part-time? There's so much more than that.
You've made the point actually in the past that the employees want a voice and a choice. So it sounds like on the good news side of things, they're getting that. They're starting to get a little bit of audience with the management, et cetera. On the
Right.
bad news, it's got to do with the details of how that's being done. It sounds like this is tricky for these companies. This is the part where they have to be very careful in how they structure these surveys, how they, what they're, a lot of times people will ask questions, I know in sales, because they're looking for the answer they want to get.
Right.
But that's not, if you really want to get this right with your employees, I think that this is a different story.
Right. I know everybody in an ideal world would love a silver bullet and say, so what is the answer? And what's the simplest way to develop a solution that really aligns to everyone? But in this situation, there is no simple answer. And I think for every company, it's going to be a bit unique and different. Over time, there's probably going to be some patterns in which there are certain sets of solutions that work better for a good portion of companies versus others. But we're in such a unique and different and changing situation that a lot of this is going to have to be iterative. A lot of this is going to have to evolve. But just like in any kind of business strategy, you have to start with understanding your employees, understanding the customer, which are your employees, what is driving the situations, their again frustrations or dynamics that they have, and what is the implication to the way that they're working. It's once you really get that picture, and it's gonna be something in which you learn and build over time. You need a place to start, but once you get that, then you can start to figure out how to co-create a different approach. That becomes your MVP.
That's a good
And
point.
once you try, right?
Yeah.
It's like building a product, but until everyone comes together, it's like your mini scrum team for anybody who knows their product development. But you've got different types of workers at different levels with different expertise. They're going to bring a different point of view, and you want to make sure that you're able to really extract those valuable insights, because many times the innovative solutions come from people who honestly may even be the most quiet, but they're thinkers. So you want to be able to extract that in such a way that everyone has that voice to be able to provide a valuable perspective. And so
I'm,
it just takes time.
I'm curious to see how these companies, which ones are able to get that co-creation that you just described, and which ones try to jam it down the way they think it should go. And that's going to end up not such a good result, I'm sure. Well,
Right. I think you're going to have a lot of pushback for those there. If it's going to be forced down, or it's going to be forced upon employees, then it's not necessarily going to net out in the best situation.
yeah. We'll keep an eye on the news. Thank you very much for your commentary, and I'm sure we'll chat next week.
Thanks so much.